What is up? Coach Emma here, and welcome back to the Fit Habit Life podcast, where we cut through the noise, talk real health and fitness, sustainable fat loss, and habits that actually work. And on today's podcast, I have a super special guest. She is a returning guest. I think you're the first returning guest I've actually had. I have not been as actively getting guests on because time is difficult to coordinate, but super excited to have you back on. This is Coach Laura. She is awesome. She's the founder of EPN and the Practical Athlete Co. And she's just a super awesome coach. We actually finally got to meet in person a couple weeks ago and go on a hike, which was cool. She was road tripping across the country. And yeah, I just thought it'd be fun to have her on, talk about a topic we've been chatting about on Facebook. So welcome back.
Happy to be back. Honestly, Emma, the first podcast we recorded was the first time we'd actually talked voice to voice. That wasn't voice memos. And
That's
now
true.
We talk a lot of voice memos and we've seen each other in person. So like, are we going to be roommates by the time we do like podcast number 3 or something?
Probably.
Yes, I think so. I'm so excited to chat today. You and I have been chatting a lot offline about this concept of intuitive eating and how you really can't intuitively eat until you know how to eat. And unfortunately, so many people come to both of us and they have no idea how to eat and they want to skip the work in between and go straight to intuitive eating. And I am glad that we get to dive into that today.
Yeah, same here. And not only do they want to skip to intuitive eating, they want to intuitively eat while losing body fat and never building muscle.
Yes. It's one of those concepts that like it's so prevalent on social media right now about how you can intuitively eat, you can do body recomposition without ever having to track your food. And on the surface and the way that it's presented, it seems like, oh yeah, if I just eat whole foods, I can do this. But when we really dig in, I think there's a big cognitive dissonance when people are like, yeah, I'm eating mostly whole foods, and we start doing food logs and we start digging into like, how are they spreading their food out throughout the day? And we realize like what you think you're doing versus what we're actually doing can be two very, very different things. And until you know what the inputs are, it's really hard to estimate the inputs. And so that's definitely a trouble spot for a lot of people coming in where they start to spin their wheels because it seems sexy on the surface, right? And in reality, it's just not so easy.
Yes. And I've actually had a lot of clients who are eating probably 90-10 whole foods, and they are pretty overweight. And they have not lost weight because they still have not been able to fully understand like what actual hunger is and what can impact hunger and the hunger signals and all of that. So like honestly, number one, I think is probably sleep. I think people don't understand how big of an impact that has on everything. And one poor night of sleep, I slept terribly yesterday, or not last night, but the night before. I was starving the whole day. Like I was ravenous. I could have eaten probably 5,000 calories. But that is not what I maintain my weight on. So had I listened to my body, I would have been eating all day. And so that's like probably one of the biggest things I've noticed. And a lot of the clients that we coach, their parents, they have kids that wake them up in the middle of the night, or, they have a demanding job, but also kids and other fun things that impact sleep quality, maybe, emotional stress at home or late nights with the spouse because that's the only time they have together. So
yeah, there's a lot that goes into hunger cues outside just food. So like, as you said, sleep. And what I'm going to add is meal timing. Meal timing, yes, when it comes to affecting your hunger cues is huge. Especially a lot of our clients come from a background of saving calories for later because they're afraid they're going to run out. And they don't understand that 3:00 snack tornado that they have when they're trying to make dinner and pull all the things together, and they find themselves like eating every snack that's supposed to go in their kid lunches. And they're like, I just have a decimation of all these little snack packs while I'm making dinner because I'm so ravenous. And that's a big part is because we saved all these calories for later and we've built up a big deficit throughout the day. So you can eat at maintenance calories and still be hungry if that timing is off. You can eat at maintenance calories and still be hungry if your sleep is off. And so understanding those inputs is really helpful when it comes to assessing hunger cues.
Yes. Yes. And like you were saying, like a lot of clients will like save calories for later in the day or that sort of thing. They also, eating that much in a sitting impacts your sleep, which then creates that cycle. And sometimes like I work with a lot of business owners, and a lot of the men that I've actually worked with, it's like they just don't really eat breakfast. And then maybe they have a protein shake or like go out and grab a quick bite to eat or something at lunch, not as many calories as they need. And then they eat like an asshole at night, and then they don't sleep well, and then they're still not hungry in the morning. And it's like this constant cycle over and over again. So not only is the meal timing a thing, but the meal timing also affects the other inputs that affect your hunger signals.
Yep. And then along with meal timing is meal composition. So like what is in each of these meals? If those meals, so I like to think of it as a balanced plate. You got to have a protein, you got to have a fat, and you got to have a fiber. If, Emma, are you a sushi eater at all?
I used to be, but I've had gut issues, and I also live in Utah. So where's the fish coming from, So, but yes, in theory, yes.
Okay, in theory. So for the sushi eaters, or I'll call it your in the house, if you've ever just eaten sushi without any of the extra accoutrement on the side, you're usually hungry 2 hours later. You can eat 800 calories of protein and straight carbs, but if there's no fiber and fat, because sushi is just protein and carbs, there's almost no fat in it. There's almost no fiber in it. If you eat a really dense whole foods, it's just rice and fish, but there's no fiber or fats along with it, that's going to digest so much more quickly than if you throw some edamame, if you have some avocado in there. That sushi is you're going to be less hungry with that same 800 calories if you change that composition slightly. So thinking about that of, is this meal balanced? Does it check all 4 boxes of having an adequate serving of protein, a bit of fat in there, a good serving of fiber, and some carbohydrates? 2 meals, entirely different outcomes when it comes to hunger management and hunger signaling a couple hours later.
Yeah. And that's actually a good point. I haven't thought about that, because I mean, depending on the sushi, I could put down multiple rolls in a sitting. So yeah, and it's true. There is no fiber or fat unless you add it to it, or, well, you get like the Vegas roll with the cream cheese or something. That's not real sushi, though.
that is Americanized sushi. But yeah, if you can add some edamame on the side, or make sure you get one with an avocado in it, or I love to get a spring roll with avocado in there, and then you're like, oh, I've checked the vegetable box too. But yeah, meal composition makes a huge difference.
It really does. And I think, well, part of it is quick digesting, but part of it too is if you're not eating enough protein or fiber with your meal, then you're not getting usually enough micronutrients as well, because usually the meat and the vegetables and the fruits have most of the micronutrients that your body needs, and that also plays a role in, fullness or satiety. Like, I've eaten, a big piece of cake or a donut or whatever, which that could be 500 to 1,000 calories, and I've still been hungry after, because there are no micronutrients in there, and that also affects your signals, because your body's like, I still need this stuff that you didn't give me. Which is where, like, I think a lot of the influencers like pushing like, oh, just eat whole foods. It's like, that is better. It is better because there's other things in there that affect your signals, but it doesn't quite lead to the result necessarily if you don't understand the other things.
Exactly. One other thing I'll go with in that meal composition piece, and this is not my analogy, but one of the gals on my team, Carly, shared this a couple months ago, and it's been really impactful. And she calls it the kitchen sink analogy. So if you put your plate of food in the kitchen sink, how quickly, if you're just running water over it, is it going down the drain? So if you put a bowl, protein shake, that's gone in 10 seconds, right?
Yeah.
So think about how that digestion flows. And a lot of people reach for things in the morning that are like Greek yogurt bowls or protein oatmeal. Like, oh, that's got to be good breakfast, right? But if you think about how quickly is that water going to break it up and put it down the drain, that's how quickly your digestion system is processing it. And so then when we swap for things like eggs and breakfast sausage or a turkey hash or something, I mean, you're going to be running water over that for a long time before it goes down the sink. And so when we think about things that are the same caloric and macronutrient and maybe even nutrient density, but are essentially pre-digested because it's been blended or cooked, or you're throwing pre-digested protein powder into your oatmeal, that's going to go down way more quickly than if you have to masticate and chew that food and then digest it. So when we think about how do we build a meal that helps understand like what your hunger cues are, we need to start making those tweaks and think about it as like, how quickly is this going to get digested on it? And like, I'm going to give an example of one client who sticks out really clearly in my mind because this was like a 1 week turnaround, and she was eating 99.1 Whole Foods. But
wow,
her meals, breakfast was this like really nutrient dense smoothie. She had like berries and avocado and everything, but it was all blended up. And that was her breakfast. And it was maybe like 600 calories or so in there. And then lunch, she had a Greek yogurt smoothie bowl with like some acai and a couple other things on it. And then dinner was a big salad. And she was like, I'm just so hungry all the time. And we were trying to find maintenance, but she was definitely gaining and was eating a surplus at that point. And her maintenance calories like maybe 1900. I was like, cool. Karen, here's what we're going to do next week. I want us to change all these things. Again, she was eating probably 8 servings of veggies, 6 servings of fruit, a good source of like, had some salmon, had some like all the things in there. And I was like, here, do this instead. We're going to have a turkey hash over sweet potatoes for breakfast. I want you to move that salad you had for dinner. We're going to make that for lunch. And then we're going to put, I can't remember if like it was a banana or it's like some sort of carb source on the side. And then we're going to have like some grilled veggies and like a burger for dinner. Exact same macro composition, completely different when it comes to digestibility. And so last week she was ravenous. This week she's like, I can't eat this. This is too much food. And it's like almost 200 calories less. But you're like, okay, well, this is the same, like same, but the how long it takes to digest is a massive factor. The volume piece is a massive factor. If you're blending it, all those fruits and veggies up into a shake and then compacting it down to like 12 fluid ounces, when normally it would take up an entire plate, and you now have to chew it and digest it, that's a big difference. And so when you're thinking about that meal composition piece, this is how you can eat calories and be really, really hungry, same macros, or be absolutely stuffed and still eating whole foods too.
Yeah, and that's actually a great point. Like you were saying, like part of the digestive process is actually chewing the food, and that actually sends a signal to the brain to release particular enzymes and start the digestive process. And if you're already eating things pre-digested, then you're not getting those signals, and it's gonna, like the sink. I love the sink analogy. I hadn't heard that before. That's gonna make everything go through your digestive tract way quicker, and it's not gonna keep you full. So that is a great point. And personally, this is why, like in general, fat loss phase for most clients don't recommend any liquid calories of any sort, because that's gonna make you way hungrier. Personally, I don't like to drink my calories, just my coffee in the morning. That's the only thing, because I like to eat food, and I can physically eat more food, even if it's the same, if I make those swaps like you were saying. So that's a great point. I like that.
Yeah.
So
liquid calories are for coffee and performance. outside of those things, I'm not a big fan of drinking them until you're in a build and you're like, I cannot possibly eat any more food.
Yes.
If you're in a build and you're like, I can't eat any more food. That's when I like to employ the protein shake, is because we have to override those satiety signals and be like, all right, I'm going to have my little orange juice mixed with protein powder because it's going to be easier to get that protein in than trying to like eat all this chicken and beef.
Yes. Yeah, totally agree. And that's when, too, I have like some clients that there's another thing too with the listening to your body signal, other side of the coin, where I've had some clients with long history of eating disorder, and the signals that their body is sending is to protect them. And they've been used to eating 1,000 to 1,200 calories a day. That is for sure not their maintenance. That is no adult's maintenance calories unless you're 70 pounds or something, which even then, probably not. So, and that's when we would go against some of the stuff we're saying now. It's like, well, we actually need to hijack those signals, because the signals that your body's sending you, they're doing that because you've made it do that. And we need to correct that by actually stimulating your appetite. So maybe you're just eating, liquid calories or a bowl of oatmeal without anything else, or, protein shakes throughout the day or something of that nature, carbs without any fat, to stimulate your appetite. But anyway.
I mean, actually, along that same line, though, how many of our clients have come to us from an intermittent fasting background and they look at breakfast food and they're like, ugh, I don't want to eat breakfast. So in those scenarios, they're like, I'm not hungry at breakfast. But then you see it at that 3 or 4 o'clock time frame. They're like, I was just so ravenous, I had to have a snack. But they're not connecting that 3 to 4 p.m. massive hunger spike is because we've been skipping breakfast for so long. And in those scenarios, I will absolutely go, hey, like, what is the maybe more easily digestible thing that we can start with in the morning as we start to stimulate those hunger cues and work towards a more satiating breakfast. But I know that if you get something in the morning, it's going to be better than the nothing, and it's going to start stemming the tide of those afternoon snack cyclones. You just have to start like trusting the process of going, hey, like if you eat a little bit more in the morning, those are going to get better, because that is a direct correlation, even if you're not hungry early in the morning. Because your body, if you skip breakfast and then you're like, oh, I just had like a salad for lunch, you have created a massive intraday deficit, right? And so this is where like trusting those hunger cues or intuitively eating can really do you dirty, because you don't know to link that 3 o'clock piece to breakfast, or you have now trained your body to have an eating pattern in a way that doesn't actually align with how you need to eat to regulate hunger.
Yes, totally agree. And there's I'd say probably most clients that come to you for fat loss or body composition change have done intermittent fasting or low carb, no carb, or I'm trying to think, what are the other ones? Carnivore, keto.
Literally all of them.
Yeah,
carb
all of
cycling,
them.
Calorie cycling. I don't know if I have seen. I don't know if I haven't seen a diet before at this point.
Yeah, same. I'm trying to think. What are the most like nuanced or like weird like niche diets? Because now, like we were talking about in our voice like chat stuff, like the calorie cycling and carb cycling are coming back in fashion.
Talk about messing up your hunger cues, guys. If you are, and it comes back, guys. This calorie cycling has been around for decades. I want to say Bill Phillips came out with a diet in the late 90s, early 2000s. Don't quote me on the decade.
I'm not sure.
But it was something like you had an unlimited day and you were in a deficit the rest of the days of the week, because you couldn't possibly eat enough on that unlimited day to undo your deficit the other 6 days of the week. Maybe if you're a dude and your maintenance calories are 3,000, but for like our female clients where we're scraping by at a 300 to 400 calorie deficit, you can absolutely have an unlimited day and just squash your results. But the negative piece that happens when we have these low and high calorie days, kind of twofold. One, when it comes from a hunger perspective, again, we talked about not being able to link breakfast to 3 o'clock. That's 8 hours later. When we're talking about what I like to call boomerang hunger, there are many times, like, especially in the crowd of people who are like, oh, maybe I'll just skip dinner because I'm not that hungry. I'll have a light dinner. And they don't recognize that that's skipping dinner, or like just having one little baby piece of salmon and trying to like white knuckle through that last meal means that the next day they're going to be even hungrier. Like, it almost always without fail shows up 24 to 48 hours later, and you're like, I have no idea why I was so ravenous. I'm like, could it possibly be that you skipped dinner and ate 1,100 calories yesterday? Oh, no. Yes. Skipping dinner or skipping a meal the day before will always come back to bite you in the rear end. Okay. So when we're thinking about, hey, why, Emma and I are of this philosophy, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but maybe I will. We're of the philosophy that, generally speaking, you should be eating within the same calorie range across the week, unless activity is broadly different. Your hunger regulation is going to be much better day to day if you eat in a similar eating pattern day to day. You can train your body to be like, hey, I eat breakfast at 8 and lunch at noon and dinner at 6:30. Like, we can train your body to do that. But if it has no idea when the next meal is because your eating pattern is not a pattern, it is just all over the place, then your hunger cues are also going to be all over the place, and you are going to have a very hard time regulating hunger in that spot. And it's also why, like, a lot of shift workers who have to flip-flop days and nights, that is a really hard population to work with to get these under control, because they're lacking sleep. Their body has no idea when the next meal is coming. And so that's like a whole nother can of worms there, but it just goes like some of these populations, or like where your job is doing you a disservice towards these goals. Really.
Yeah. And that's actually the other big thing about sleep, and why sleep is so important, is it does affect your body's natural rhythm of everything, like your hormone rhythm, your circadian rhythm. That's like your body's biological daily clock. That's impacted by sleep time, which is why night shift workers have probably the hardest time changing their body composition, because they're basically jet lagged every day. And so when you go to sleep, when you wake up, when you eat, when you train, when you do your normal day-to-day stuff, that impacts hunger. And hunger impacts, and when you eat, impacts the other parts. So it's kind of like this cycle. So yeah, that's, and with the whole like calorie cycling and carb cycling things, I've implemented it. I've done it in some capacity, not for fat loss necessarily, but like to push performance. And on the days that I'm not training or I'm not increasing my carb intake, I am super hungry the whole time, because my body's like, well, yesterday you had like 100 more grams of carbs. Where are my carbs? And I'm like, I know. Because so it's, and yeah, it's hard. So not great. And having, like you were talking about specifically with women too, most women's maintenance calories are not that high. And again, if you're in 300 to 400 calorie deficit every day, you could easily eat that much on a freebie day, like a cheat day, right? If you're eating any type of alcohol or any type of baked processed good, you're donezo on that, and your deficit, quote unquote, for the entire week is nil.
Yeah, well, exactly. And we think about, again, we've only talked about some of these things like lifestyle factors that override. Then you go like, if we go from this Whole Foods to baked goods, the other thing that I recommend people do in this is, so if you're baked goods, I love a baked goods. I cannot do a fat loss phase in the summer because that's farmers market season, and farmers market season means baked goods. But as people who think they're eating mostly whole foods and they think they're eating 90-10, what I recommend that they do is take a look at your plate. Okay, so again, going to bring in the calorie tracking here. But let's say you're making a summer salad. You've got like chicken and tomatoes and avocado and cucumber and lettuce and a vinaigrette. And then you're like, oh, I got this like delicious farmer's market cookie. I'm going to put that on the side. 90% of my clients be like, oh, that's like 80-20, right? Because I've got this big salad and I've got a cookie. But if you go put all that into your chronometer, that cookie is about 400 calories. Your salad's about 350. You are not eating 80-20. You are eating
50,
45, 55, yeah. 50, 50, yeah, depending on how you split it, on how big that cookie is. And that's the thing where it's like, oh, well, like volume wise, sure. But when we think about intake and what's actually going in your body, like not the case. And so that's when we talk about why that intuitively you might think that's 80-20 because you have never tracked that before to understand, oh, that's why I'm still hungry afterwards, because I really only got 300 calories of whole foods and like 400 calories of super high hunger. Oh, I was going to say satiety.
Hyper palatable.
That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, super hyper palatable cookie plus a salad. And so when we think about the pitfalls of this 80-20 eating, the other thing I'll add too is that a lot of these influencers are pushing this, intuitive eating, or like you can just have these desserts and things. And we think back to The Biggest Loser. All right, back in the early 2000s, they were feeding them like lean cuisine pizzas and like, protein cheesecake. But like the macros on, first of all, please don't make a protein cheesecake. Like have some cheesecake along with your protein. But that's like another conversation. But if you look at what they're eating, like, I can have this dessert. That's not the same as that slice of cheesecake from Costco. That's like 700 calories a slice too. Right? So we're taking like, this person can fit these things in. They're making this dessert. I'm going to do something similar. And it's just not the same. But you don't have that frame of reference to understand what is going into your body. You haven't maybe done the evaluation of like, where are my meals spread out? How am I spreading out these calories? What is the composition of these calories to then build that blueprint that you can then quote unquote intuitively eat from? But the people who are really intuitive eating and these influencers who are pushing intuitive eating, they tracked for a long time.
Very long time.
And then they go, every single plate I eat needs to look something like this. And they've got maybe, their own pie chart on their plate that's this much protein, this much veg, a little bit of carb. And they essentially have a meal plan. It built from years of doing those things. They're like, I can just intuitively eat. I don't have to track any days. Correct, because you have a meal plan that essentially is tracking without tracking. And we just can't skip that piece of it until you understand like, hey, what are my needs? How do I regulate my hunger? How do I understand when I'm actually hungry? Or do I need to sit with myself and be like, did I sleep well last night? Am I ovulating tomorrow? Am I did I have a really crazy travel day? Has it been really, really stressful that I've been trying to do this launch and like work has been hectic and maybe I'm really stressed and I'm really hungry, but I'm not actually hungry? If you haven't done that kind of introspective work, that's both qualitative and quantitative, your ability to navigate eating intuitively is to maintenance is probably not there, let alone try to navigate an intuitive build or intuitive fat loss phase.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I've been doing this. I've been on a health and fitness journey for like 12 years. 12 years. I've been coaching for 3 years. I still track everything and I kind of know the stuff, but I know that I like to eat food. And so if I like to eat food, I will probably have bigger servings of things on my plate more than I need to than if I just weighed my food and had that data, which takes like literally no extra effort. You put the plate on the scale and that's the extra step. But yeah, it's like if you haven't flexed those muscles, you've never actually spent the time to learn what you're eating or what's in the food, like calories, macros, micronutrients too, how certain foods make you feel, how different lifestyle factors affect the choices that you make, then you're not in the place where you could quote unquote intuitively eat. Because like you said, intuitively eating is literally just your own built out meal plan that you've spent probably a decade perfecting based on years of tracking and getting in tune with your body. Like, same thing with training. You can't intuitively train, probably, if you're listening to this, because if you're, well, I don't want to be a hater or anything, but a lot of people that come to me, they've not trained before. And so if you've never trained before, you intuitively training is not training. It's sitting on the couch or, which is fine. That's, stepping stones. But I don't even intuitively train. I can't even do that. I've been training for 14 years. I've been lifting weights for 14 years. Half of my life I've been lifting weights. And I still need a plan and a structure and writing down like the weights that I did the week before to make sure I'm pushing the intensity and progressively overloading. So it's kind of the same thing. And then with like finances, like, do people just intuitively budget?
Obviously not well, based on the state of the debt of the American people. I think they try.
They try. No, even like most people I know, like, they don't intuitively budget. They that are financially responsible. I mean, there's some people that I know in my life that are very successful to where they don't have to worry about budgeting anything. But then the people that I know in my life that are like me and not in a place like that, we budget. We like check our, whatever thing you use to budget to make sure we can afford this trip or this thing or this night out to eat. You don't just do it and then just hope for the best. So same thing with calories. If you don't actually know, if you're not in the spot where your body is in a healthy, and I guess akin to the unlimited financial budget, if you like the way you look and you understand your body's signals and you're not trying to actively change your body composition, then yeah, you can intuitively eat. But that takes years of learning and effort and time to get to that point.
And intuitively eating is often just tracking with a different lens, right? So yep. Emma and I like to track. I bet I'm gonna throw Emma a bone here, and I bet that she could maintain her body weight and hit her protein regularly if she decided to stop tracking today. And I know that I could too. But what am I gonna do? I'm gonna okay, well, usually at 2:00 in the afternoon, I'm like, I kind of want a snack. Do I have to have a snack? No. But do I know I can fit it in if I just throw it in Chronometer? We're like, oh yeah, I can totally have a Olipop and some dried figs. But would I do that if I was intuitively eating? No, because I'm like, let me think about my meal blueprint. All right, if I want to intuitively eat, I know I got to eat 3 meals a day and I will have 1 snack around my training session. And that is usually maintenance calories for me. And if I'm quote unquote intuitively eating, then there's not going to be those freebies in there or fitting something in. I'm probably going to eat actually less sweets than I do right now. And I personally prefer to track, and I'm sure you do too, because we can't. We're like, hey, we live in a hyper palatable world, and I'm not trying to avoid some of those hyper palatable foods. In fact, I just went to Costco with my sister-in-law, and I just got a lot of stuff.
It's dangerous.
But I'm like, I wouldn't necessarily even buy some of those things, because then I'd be like, well, how do I fit this in my meal blueprint plate too? Because personally, I want to maximize. If I know that my maintenance range is 2,600 calories, you bet I'm eating like $25.99 every single day, because I'd rather eat at the top end than the bottom end. But when we go from an intuitive perspective, you don't really know what that range looks like. You just know what the meals per day does. And you may short yourself because you're not going to try and squeeze those things in. Or you are, and then push yourself into a accidental surplus. And while we can, it's just, again, tracking by a different ruler. So it's, I have the number of meals I need to eat, or how many times a day I need to eat, or what do those meals look like? And that's your new ruler. But it's not really intuitive.
Yeah, no, it definitely isn't. Like, I spent time building out the meals that I eat regularly, and I actually like flexibility. So that's why, like you, like, I like to track, because I don't like to eat the same dinner or lunch every day. Breakfast, yeah, I have the same breakfast every day. I love it. It's great. But I like a little bit of flexibility later in the day. And if I want to go get ice cream with some friends, or we went to the movies last week and I got a medium-sized popcorn, I don't have that often, but I want to enjoy the whole thing and sit and watch the movie and eat my popcorn. But if I'm intuitively eating, it would be really hard to do that. Because it's like, how would I fit that in? I have no idea how many calories that is. Now I do. I think it's like 700 plus calories. Um, and that's an estimate. I don't put the extra butter on the popcorn, but it's a lot. It's pretty big, and it's a lot more flavorful than the one that I make at home. So it's probably at least double.
Well, we need to be friends on Chronometer because I have created custom movie theater popcorn entries for all my clients. So,
oh,
yeah,
that is great.
It was some deep internet digging to make that.
Okay, yes, I will add you after this. Yeah, and I mean, like, another example, Easter was like a week and a half ago, right? Who had treats on Easter? I did. Did you have some the next couple days? Probably, right?
I'm not throwing away leftovers.
No.
Well, okay, I know it's Easter, but there was a whole thing like on Black Friday about throw away your Thanksgiving leftovers. In this economy, who can afford to throw away Thanksgiving leftovers?
Why would you do
I'm gonna
that?
eat that. Because they're not healthy. Like, you know what? I'm gonna eat that entire tray of gluten-free stuffing over the course of the 6 days post Thanksgiving. Like, yeah, I'm not wasting that. But if
I get tired of food, but my husband, he ate all the things for Thanksgiving. Easter, my mother-in-law made a carrot cake. He had it every day for breakfast with protein, of course. I think for like 5 days. Also, carrot cake, holy crap. I think the piece, because on Easter, I didn't track that dinner. I left room. It was just, one meal. And then the next day I found the recipe and we had the leftover carrot cake. One slice that we had, I think, was like 800 calories. And I weighed it out the next day when I had a piece and I was like, this tiny piece is 400 calories. I had like 2 times that size. And until you track, you don't know this. Like, you don't understand it. And now I do. I know what's in it. And I was like, oh, crap. Okay. But I'm glad that I track because then it allows me to have these foods on occasion and still feel good, but also not feel deprived. Like before, I would not allow myself to have any like super sweet things or any non-Whole Foods foods. Like I was very restrictive. And it was not fun. It was not fun. It's fun to have a piece of carrot cake and go to the movies and get fun things at Costco and summer pastries, And if you want to intuitively eat to maintain your weight, you probably can't eat those things.
Yeah. Or they're going to be few and far between.
Yes.
And so when we think about, okay, the case for intuitive dieting, that's where it actually gets harder. Because when we think about how we manage fat loss for our clients, we go, hey, I'll tell my clients, eat a piece of chocolate with lunch and dinner. Just make it a smaller serving because you're going to feel a lot less restricted, or make it, 1 square instead of 3 squares, or like whatever that looks like. When we start to impose even more rules around what we're eating versus focusing on high satiety, higher blueprints, you may feel so restricted that you burn out of trying to do it, or you go so far. So I recently had a client of mine get some guidelines about how to, she sent me over and she was like, hey, I saw this and it's like how to intuitively be fat loss. There's all these swaps to make. And I was like, this is great if your maintenance calories are like 500 less than they are. And her maintenance calories are like at close to 3,000 because she's tall. Oh, and wow. Yeah, and very active, like 15,000 steps a day, and you're 5'11", like your maintenance calories are higher. And I was like, if you followed this, and it was like no starches, use only spaghetti squash or rice cauliflower. It was like only use light almond milk or light coconut. I'm like, if you followed this blueprint, you're gonna be 1,800 calories, 1,900 calories, unless you're eating like an entire half of a spaghetti squash at a meal, and like you were gonna be too hungry. Like these aren't like. For some people, this might be a good swap, but like for you actually need a little bit more carbs in your system where this is going to you're going to burn out real quick, or you got to eat like 4 meals a day because that intuitive meal blueprint plan isn't going to work for you too. And this is where understanding your intake is also really helpful because, generic swaps may not make sense for you. Or for our clients who are really short, on the other hand of the spectrum, whose deficit calories are really low, that might not be enough of swapping. And so understanding where your home base is and where your maintenance needs are is really, really, really important, because we can't jump to third base without like 7 in the batter's box.
Yes. Yes, totally agree. And I mean, my goal for most of my clients is to get them to a point, if they want to intuitively eat, to teach them how to do that. But it's by learning how to track and understanding what your actual maintenance is, and actually going through a muscle building phase and a fat loss phase to understand how to do it and how to continue to do it. And then, if you don't want to track forever, you don't have to, but then you have the skill, because oftentimes what might happen, which has happened to me too, I've taken breaks from tracking, I might get a little softer and I'll be like, I'm probably eating more than my maintenance right now, so let's dial things back up a little bit. And then from there, you have the tools and the skills, and you're able to do that. But like you said, you can't just skip steps. Or, I mean, it's going to take forever. It's not going to be effective, and you're just going to be beating your head against the wall because you don't actually know if you're making progress. And you probably aren't, because you probably haven't connected to all those little things that we've talked about.
Exactly. And I think the thing that I want to kind of throw in here is, so many times people approach us as newer to understanding like what nutrition coaching is. And they're thinking back to like macro coaches. And Emma, you and I are not macro coaches. The first 2 months of working with us are going to be really intensive, knocking out everything we talked about in the first 30 minutes. We are looking at your hunger cues. We're looking at your meal composition, your meal timing. What do each of those meals look like? And what foods do you like to eat? We're not giving you a meal plan. We're going, okay, what do you like to eat? And like, here's an example of how we can maybe phase this differently to better support your hunger cues. And it's not a macro conversation. It's like, how do we accelerate eating nutrient-dense foods in a way that works for you, in a way that works for your schedule? And then we build that out for you so that we can build that foundation. And it's going to be 1,000% faster than the self-trial, because I guarantee you probably hadn't thought about one of the two things that Emma and I talked about in the first 30 minutes. And you're going to go, oh, wow, okay, never thought I could eat that way. Or I've never heard about that. I've never heard of the kitchen sink. I didn't realize sleep affected my hunger. And when you start to put all those pieces together with our help, our goal is to accelerate that process. Not saying you can't DIY it. You can. It just might take a lot longer because you haven't looked at thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of food logs like we have, or had these conversations, or had that troubleshooting aspect. So we're here to help accelerate that process so that you understand what to eat, how much to eat, and how to do it flexibly in a way that works for your lifestyle. And so when we're talking about hunger, that's our goal here, to help you guys communicate that, but also how we help you do that in the one-on-one setting as well.
Yeah. And not only have we coached clients through this, but both Laura and I had our own experience and journey, which is what drove us to becoming coaches. And I don't know about you, but I struggled for a long time, like a long time. That's why I said my fitness journey is like 10, 12 years now. And I am young, I guess, generally speaking. It's like been half of my life. But I wished I had known some of the things that I know now, or having, and I'm sure you do as well. But that's why we're great coaches, because we've been there. And so we understand exactly probably what you're thinking and going through, because we were there at some point too.
Yes. I don't think any good coaches come from a background of not having their own journey. I mean, truly, we've navigated quite a bit. Coming off the collegiate athlete into like real world desk job is like a big whiplash in and of itself. And then you throw in some gut health, and at least for Emma and I both too. And I'm not going to put words in your mouth here, but for myself, following a lot of the guidance in the post collegiate era for me of like how much to eat did me dirty a lot, because from an activity perspective, from a muscle perspective, I needed a lot more calories. And so I was in that, okay, I have to eat closer to 2,000. And I would be like, why am I struggling? I don't even diet on 2,000 calories now, like 15 years later, but I tried to eat that as my maintenance calories for a long time when I first started tracking. And I didn't know at the time. We've learned a lot now in the last 16 years. But I didn't know at the time that people's maintenance could be higher because it's just like, 2,000 what you're supposed to eat in a day. No. And like that's a big frustration point. And you go, once you learn what it is that you need to manage your hunger cues and maintenance, like life gets a lot brighter.
Yes, it definitely does. It definitely does. And yeah, I didn't track calories for a while. I just did like whole foods. I did no carbs as an athlete in college. Dumb. So if you do sports, definitely eat carbs, people. Carbs are great. They're awesome. Then it was like, I can only eat whole foods, which is why I'm like such a big fan of tracking, because even when I was eating only whole foods, some of the whole foods I ate were really high in calories, and so my body composition wasn't changing, and I didn't feel good because I wasn't eating carbs, wasn't fueling my activity. And there were probably some days where I ate less than 2,000 calories, and then the next day I would eat like 4,000 because I was starving. So yes, and there's so much more better knowledge out there. But still, there are, I don't like the word misinformation. What is a better word for that? Like
misguided?
Yes. Yeah. Misguided stuff out there. So yes, I don't know where I'm going, but I think you've got it. But yeah, so hunger, it's not as simple as eating enough. There's many things that affect it.
The dictionary evades us today. It's multifactorial. It has many facets to hunger. Yeah.
I'm sorry. People, I'm not as sharp today as usual. But yeah, it's multifaceted. And it's, if you haven't paid attention to those things, definitely start. And start noticing too that. And one of the funniest things a lot of my clients, which your clients probably say too, is, I started noticing this thing and I never noticed it before because I wasn't actually trying to pay attention to how I felt, or, other stuff like with cravings, like, I get cravings at this time in the afternoon, but I never paid attention to it before, so I don't know when it started. Then it's our job to help you figure out what could be actually contributing to that, or and so becoming just more aware in general of yourself, of your states of mind and things, that's part of our job too. But I am really rambling today, and so I'm just gonna leave us on this note. So Laura, what do you want to leave the audience with?
If you're hungry, it might be a food thing, but it might be any of those other factors, guys. And so the number one thing you can start doing is just start quantifying what's going on. And when you can start quantifying, you can start identifying. And when you can start identifying, we can start modifying. And when we can start modifying, we'll be a little bit less hungry. Emma and I both have posted a ton about managing hunger and understanding these things. So give us a look on the Instagram. We are happy to help troubleshoot here. And thanks for tuning in.
Yes. Yeah. And where can listeners find you? I will post it in the show notes, but some people just listen. Yeah. So just
at Laura Justine Savino or at Elevated Pursuit Nutrition are going to be the two easiest places. And from there, it'll take you wherever you want to go.
Cool. So give her a follow. She's great. I have not been as consistent lately, but I'm hopping back on 3 days in a row, I think, maybe. But anyway, so yeah, give us a follow and let us know if you have any questions. And if you enjoyed the episode, if it was helpful, please share it. The goal of the show is to help people and debunk a bunch of the crap out there, which is why we did this episode. There's some people out there saying just listen to your own hunger signals, and that's not always correct. So please share it, and thank you for listening. We'll catch you guys on the next one.